All right, we're live. We're doing short answer questions for period 2, AP World. All right, so just to like give you a sense of how today will look, I'm going to focus on short answer questions. So that includes just like how to do them, right? Like how to actually do them. And we'll do a bunch of practice ones for period 2. So just like always, I would definitely suggest taking notes. Super helpful to you to write things down. Definitely send any questions you have, and I'll stop and answer them. And cool. So I'm excited to get this done. I think this is going to be a good session with short answers. So the thing about short answer questions is that I feel like they kind of get overlooked. You tend to focus on the LEQs, on the DBQs. Like there's always, you get more stressed out about the big essays, and you tend to overlook the short answer questions because they're short, right? But the SAQs are, I forget the percentage. Does anyone know the percentage that they're worth on the exam? I can look that up, or maybe someone can look it up for me. But they're a pretty, important part of the test. And honestly, I would say that they're the easiest written portion. So, you're going to see 3 questions, and each are worth 3 points, right? And there's no like crazy intense rubric that you have to know. You just have to be able to answer the question and kind of know the formula to pick up all 3 points. Like, how do I pick up as many points as I can? So the way that I do that, and then the way that they're graded, right? Like I said, there's no rubric. They're graded on what's called a binary system, binary scoring. So it's literally just like binary is kind of like the 20%. Cool, thank you. The 20% is a huge chunk. Like the DBQ is like 25%. So, it's actually worth more than the LEQ. I think the LEQ is 15%. So it's just like one of those things that gets overlooked. But I mean, like there's a teacher Facebook group, just like there's a student one. And in the teacher one, there's this one dude that has done he's written like a lot of the parts of the test. He's like a big name in it. And he wrote this post about how he spent a lot of this year in his own classroom really focusing on SAQs, because 20%, that's huge and not that hard to actually pick up the points. And so if you can get all 9 points available, or a lot of them, you're in a really good spot. So binary scoring is kind of like, ones and zeros, like that's binary, right? So the whole thing is like you either get 0 on what you write or 1. Like you either get the point or you don't. And so there's no in between. There's no partial credit. There's no, insane rubric. It's literally like, did you answer the question? That's the key with short answer questions. So how do you actually go about doing a short answer? So, this is the system that I use. And it's called ACE. Have any of you used this? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of ACE? Do you already use it? Yes, sweet. So you're in a good spot, because this is the system I'm going to teach you right now, and hope that this is going to help you earn more things. So Vera, if you've never heard of it, no worries. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, and then with all these examples, you're going to be able to see what it looks like in practice. So it's really like all the short answer questions are going to have either a source attached to it, or it's just like a source with like A, B, C, right? Or a source with A and B, where like B asks for 2 things. Or there's no source and it's just like A, B, C, answer the questions. Or A and B is asking you for 2 things. But you'll always see a question like, here, like this, right? Explain one similarity. Choose one religion. Explain one way. So you might see one that says explain 2 ways, in which case that would just have an A and B. But that's just kind of what it looks like. So when I say ACE, I'll show you what those stand for in a second. I'm basically referring to the way you want to do this is that you want to write this document. I'm just making up as I go. I will upload this to the community. You just don't need to. So Dylan, so the question was, if it asks for 1, You need to explain 2, and you shouldn't explain 2. You should explain 1. So this is all about quality, quantity. I mean, really, your whole test is. But in terms of here, ACE, you basically want to write 3 sentences for A, 3 sentences for B. Or if B is asking you for 2 things, then you write 6 sentences. So it's like 3 sentences per point. Oh, do some math. If the short answer question is worth 3 points, how many total sentences should you have? Let's see how good at math everybody is. Done, right? 9. It's just like ABC, and this is what I'm going to show you is what do those 3 sentences look like? So like I said, if this were A, you would write 3 sentences for that, and that would get you the point, right? If this was B, you would write 3 sentences for that. So the first sentence you write is A, is this ACE. So this is where you are literally answer the question. So that's where it says like, one way, right? One cause, one similarity, whatever it is that you're actually doing, whatever the question is asking. This is where your first sentence is just like answer the question, like provide the actual answer that is correct. So, and we'll get into this when we do examples, but for this one, it's asking for one similarity in the spread of these 2 religions. So in that first sentence, you would just give the answer. What is one of the similarities? One similarity in the spread of religions would be blank. C is where you would cite an example. So in this case, this looks more like the, for example, or, like you would give one similarity and then you would give a little bit more detail, right? More detail about your answer. Be specific, more specific detail. So this is where you would give some specific evidence. Yeah, exactly, right? So C is like the evidence, and that's where you would give that. E is explain. So this is where you would say, therefore, or, is kind of like, as you can see, right? So you're like, one similarity is this, right? Here's some detail. Here's some evidence that proves that point. And this last one is just like me rounding it out, just proving again, like this is why that was similar, right? This is like the why, or this is the, like this is, you're kind of like wrapping it up. You're just kind of explaining that piece, that piece of information. So that's like what it looks like. So, like the key here is knowing these words, right? Like explain, like it doesn't just say identify. So it's not enough for you to just say the similarity and move on. Like that's where this stuff is super important. And, same thing here, like explain. Most of them say explain or discuss. And that's why you can't just get the point with just this, even though that technically answers the question. You have to use these other 2 to help you explain and prove your point, prove what you're arguing. Where would the evidence come from, since the explanation is from what we know? So the evidence is like key terms, or like a specific event or concept or idea or person or date, like specific, really specific words that are backing you up, right? So if you say one cause of, World War I was militarism, then you would say an example would be like, well, Germany was building up their armaments and, had more, more and more weapons in the time before World War I. Let me explain. Well, now here's where you're showing why was militarism a cause of the war? Well, because when more countries build up their arms, they're more likely to use them, right? So if they're, conflicting, if they're rivals, and if my rival has a bunch of weapons, then I'm more likely to actually like use them, right? Like I'm going to build mine up too. Sort of like context first. So it's like the A is just straight up answering. The C is just giving a specific example of your answer, because in here you're just going to say, like think of it as like a little body paragraph for the LEQ, right? This is your topic sentence. This is your evidence, right? You got to like explain, you got to give something more than just your topic sentence. And this is like your analysis. This is your like, why does that Why is that thing true? Why does that matter? Why did that affect whatever? All right, so any questions on the basic structure of SAQs? This will get a little bit more clear when we start to write examples. But let me just give you a second. If you got a question about the actual structure of them, please type that in now so that I can just like go over any other like specifics of that. Okay, so 2 questions. How much space do we get? That's a really good point. This is the only part of the written portion that you are confined to an area. So you're gonna get I don't have an example page of it, but it's just like a straight up piece of paper and it's got a box on it, and you have to write your answer in the box. Like nothing outside of the box will get graded. So you got to stay in the box. So that's why you want to stick to not writing that much. Like they want the short answers to stay short. And so you've got to, you got plenty of space to do 3 sentences per, A, B, and C, but you don't have much more space than that. And in fact, you don't feel like you got to write like tiny on it, but, save yourself some space. Do we need a concluding sentence? Not really, Carla. So this explain here is kind of your conclusion sentence of that little thing, right? Just keep it simple, 3 sentences and just explain your reasoning and then move to the next section. So you don't need to give anything else here. If you're given a doc or precept, do you have to cite from that, or can you? No, you don't. Okay, so nowhere in the test do you have to use citations. And in fact, I would tell you do not use citations. Using quotes, I mean, like you don't want to ever use quotes because that wastes your time. So if you're given a document, and I'll try to pull up some that actually have documents. Usually what it'll say is like, it's kind of like the multiple choice, right? Here's this document, and then they'll ask you a question like based on that document, right? It might say like, what's one piece of evidence that supports this person's argument, right? Like I was doing one yesterday that was showing about the Cold War, and one document had like the Cold War was inevitable, and another one said it wasn't. So then it was like, give one piece of evidence that supports document 1. And so you would just have to show, here's a reason why we know that the Cold War was inevitable. So you're not actually citing from the source, you're just giving a piece of evidence that supports that document, right? So yeah, definitely don't cite, and you can paraphrase, but in general, they won't even ask you to do that. You don't have to. I've heard that sometimes we have a better chance of getting more points if we cross out the letters after we finish our response. What do you mean, cross out the letters? Like cross off A, B, C? Yeah, okay. If the grader doesn't think something is relevant. All right, so let me just give you a little sense of the read also. You literally want to set up in the box, label A, B, and C. Label A, and then answer A. Label B, and then answer B. Labels, do it just like that. A, 3 sentences, write B, 3 sentences. If you don't do it that way, you don't lose any points. But this makes it really easy for you to keep track of what you've done and for the reader to keep track of it as well. You should set it up like that. That just helps you. But something that you should know. So at the read, the entire AP exam, the whole exam and the read itself is all asset based. So what that means is like any part of the exam they're looking at, they're grading, they're giving you points for what you do correctly. They're never taking points away from you. So you never lose points, right? Even on the multiple choice, you start at 0, and for everyone you get correct, you get 1. But you never lose a point. So if you guess and you get it wrong, you don't like lose a point. You just get a point every time you do something correct. Same thing in the short answer. They read your short answer, and every time they feel like you've done this correctly, you'll get a point. If you have something that's wrong, they just kind of ignore it. It's wrong, so you don't get the point, but it doesn't take away from anything you did right. Okay, so keep asking questions as you got them. All right, so here's what I'll do. So these are each, I thought this would be a little bit better, but then I'll also try to find one that's just all of them together. But this just has part A. just so that we can kind of do a bunch of them about different topics and not all of them about the one thing, right? So we can do a couple of different ones and really talk about period 2 a little bit more here. So let's say this was a short answer question you got, and this was just one of them. And this is talking about the spread of Buddhism and Christianity. So, part B could have asked, explain one difference, explain another similarity. Like that's one way it could go, right? Like, let me just write this down in case, explain one difference. Like, this is just a simple way to see it. And that could be a short answer question that you have. All right, so how do we attack part A? So you literally just need to answer the question and then kind of explain that. So let me ask you guys really quick. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this content. So in terms of the spread of Buddhism and Christianity in this time period, in the second period, what are some similarities in the spread? Like, what's similar about the spread of Buddhism and the spread of Christianity? I've got some ideas, and I'm just curious from you guys, like, from what you know about this time period, how are they similar? Yeah, Dylan. Trade is always a lot of times an answer, especially in these early time periods. So trade is for sure one way that that we're seeing a similarity. Anyone else have any ideas of how they're similar? And I'll tell you some other examples of things that you could write. Yeah, good, right? Missionaries. Both are being spread with missionaries. Both are spread along trade routes. Both are missionaries. Both are actually also, what are they called? Shoot, I can't think of the word. They are religions of salvation. And so what that means is that they are both like heavily focused on like an afterlife, right? Like reaching that like salvation. And so actually both of them appeal most to the lower class, right? It's the like lower class people that you hear about Buddhism and you're in the lower caste of Hindu, you're a lower caste Hindu, and you're like, oh, like that's a good one, right? Or for Christianity, it's like if you're living in Rome and like Rome was like not a nice place to live for a long time. Like it's pretty gross. It's like not, life is not necessarily great for a lot of people. And so when you hear about Christianity, it's like, well, this life that I'm living kind of sucks, but the afterlife sounds awesome. So if I convert to Christianity, I can, I can reach that salvation, that personal salvation, and have an awesome afterlife. Elites from certain areas. So yeah, so I think the spread, it might be elites that are spreading it, but it's the lower classes that love it. Like that's where it's catching on. So, all right. So if we were going to choose one, so let's say we chose trade. Okay. You would just start like this. It would say, question A. And you would just write one similarity in how Buddhism and Christianity spread during the classical era was through trade routes. Okay? You're just straight up answering the question. Like that's just this, right? So we just chose that one. For example, and then I would kind of like show a little piece of information from one of these things. For example, Christianity spread from the Middle East to Europe on the Silk Roads, and Buddhism spread from from India to Southeast Asia on the Indian Ocean network. Okay, so now those are my examples, right? So I'm just giving evidence. So now I know, I'm saying they spread through trade routes, and my next sentence, okay, well, like which trade routes, where, right? So that's going to help you there. And this is honestly, the sentence is even a little longer than sometimes it would need to be because this one's talking about two different things. And then, Dylan, I'll answer your question in a second. The last sentence is when you're going to really show like the question's asking you to explain. It's not just asking you to identify. If it just said straight up identify, then that would be enough. But because it says explain, you have to really show why. So why would religions spread on trade routes, right? The merchants on these trade routes brought their cultures with them, and missionaries used the trade routes like to specifically spread these religions. I would get you the point, right? Because you're just kind of explaining. You know, 3 sentences. Again, I think what I wrote here is, even because we're talking about 2 things, it's almost even like more that you have to include. But for this, like, that's it. It's 3 sentences. We answered it. Let's do this. So let's highlight. So this one would be, there's your A. Here is your C, ACE, right? ACE. Here's your C, and here's your E. This would be your last section, right? And there you go. And that would be a point. So 3 sentences, boom, boom, next. So if we explain another similarity, it would be the same thing. You know, another similarity in the spread of Buddhism and Christianity is that both appeal to the lower class. You know, for example, many, you know, Hindus converted to Buddhism because it provided salvation from the caste system. You know, because the caste system kept people where it was rigid and you couldn't move out of it, Buddhism like allowed people an out that was, you know, wasn't based on social mobility. And that kind of, again, just explains it. And then you can explain the difference. Dylan's question was like, should you know the names of the time periods? It just makes it easier so you don't have to say the years all the time. I mean, it's not kind of hard to know them. Classical is the one that you'll use the most, I think, and then post-classical. Early modern, like those get kind of confusing, but if you know the names of the eras, it just helps you to like explain things in less words. All right, let me just move this. All right, so all right, any questions on that one, on what we did there? Does that make sense? If you feel like, oh, all right, I think I got it. Give me a 1 in the chat if that makes sense. If you feel like that makes sense to you and you feel like I would kind of know how to do this. Sweet. All right, everyone's in the same spot. All right, let's do another one. So I'll do another one, and then I'm going to ask you guys to write some examples because I think that's the best way to really make sure that you are learning. So, gender expectations and rules were often expressed in various ways. Many times, religious and philosophical traditions enforced patriarchy in the societies where these traditions existed. So, choose one religion or philosophical tradition and explain one way that gender inequalities were reinforced. So this gives us a lot of options here. You know, you get to choose a religion. Keep in mind, you'd have to choose one from this time period. So you couldn't choose, well, I guess it doesn't really say the time period in here, but let's imagine that it says in the classical era. So you wouldn't be able to choose Islam, but you know, I'm guessing you would probably choose Christianity or Buddhism or like Confucianism. So, you know, what do you think? What do you know about Confucianism? You know, how does Confucianism reflect gender inequalities? Like, how does it create a patriarchal system? What do you know about Confucianism that does that? Confucianism is basically women suck. So that's the religion, kind of. So, you know, you've got, you know, basically it favors men in general, and it's going to put women at the bottom of the family structure, right? Women should be submissive to men, right? You also have things like the relationships. The 5 relationships are mostly focused on the male's relationship to others, right? Less about the like female's relationship, right? So it's like man and wife, but it's less about like, you don't even get necessarily like women and how, I don't know, you don't get like a female to female relationship. It doesn't talk about that. Not just like married, but like friends, right? It talks only about men. Yeah, right. Like 5 relationships. All right. What about Buddhism? How does Buddhism affect gender inequalities? How it reinforces gender inequalities? It's a hard question. I think this one's a fair example of what you might actually see on the test. So, all right. So one thing that you could add for Buddhism could be that like women were not initially allowed to become nuns. So they couldn't really like have any sort of power in the religion, right? So men are usually practicing it first. Later on, they are. No, the word nun can be applied to Buddhism as well. We typically think of it as Christian, but nuns are just like people that kind of work in the like church system. So for Buddhist nuns, they're going to look a little different, how they dress, what they're doing every day, but it's similar. All right, let's just focus on that. So let's write the Confucianism one. Right, so A. One way that Confucianism reinforced gender inequalities. Oh my God. Reinforced inequalities. Good thing that spelling is not a part of your tests. They won't take off any points for spelling. I don't know, let's talk about we're through the 5 relationships. Okay. And then you might say, like, for example, the relationships that are emphasized are mostly are like between men and are not, I don't know, and are unequal for women. I think that's fine. And then the last sentence that you would have is, therefore, women in China were not given the same opportunities as men because of this patriarchal system. Boom, right? So let's highlight. So you got the first sentence, there's your A, there's the yellow. You've got the second sentence, there's your C. Foot binding comes in later. It's the tang and the song that start foot binding. So I am not entirely sure how connected it is to Confucianism, but it's very much connected to a patriarchal society, but it comes in later. So you wouldn't be able to talk about it here. All right, so you can see how like this one's even a little shorter because I'm not talking about 2 things, right? Here I was talking about Christianity and Buddhism. Here I'm just talking about one. So should we mention an example of how women were unequal to men? It seems like the statement after therefore is general. So the thing is that this last statement is general, but it's proving why Confucianism would have reinforced like gender inequality, right? You're showing that like women are not given the same opportunities, and you could be more specific, same opportunities like outside of socializing children, something like that, right? Or in education, you could give an example like that, and that would be fine. But I think you can keep that more broad too, because ultimately all you're doing here is just reinforcing that first statement you made. Like you're just kind of proving that like women in China don't have the same rights as men because of that. All right, so let's do another one. And this one, I want you guys to write an example, and you're going to write it up and submit it, and we'll look at what you guys write in the chat. So we could do one similarity. Let's see. Nah. Boring. Let's do. All right, let's do this one. This one's nice and broad. All right. So social, cultural, and environmental and political factors all influence state formation, expansion, and dissolution in the period from 600 to 600. What is one difference of the Roman and Chinese empires from 600 to 600? So here you can talk about any difference. It just kind of lists, here's some options. So you can basically choose anything like that, and you're going to talk about one difference. So I want you to write in the chat your 3 sentences. How would you answer that question? And then we're going to give each other some feedback and go over your examples, because this is a smaller session, and so I'm able to really give you a lot of feedback on what you write. So take a minute, write yourself an answer, 3 sentences, just like I did, of how you would answer this question. One difference between Rome and China. So basically one difference between Rome and Han. All right, so I'm going to give you, so usually you have like 12 minutes to answer a question. I'm going to give you 2 minutes on this, and then we'll read what you got. So I'll let the time tick. Okay, so Carla, while you finish up and send it, let's go over these. Okay, so from the first one. One difference of the Roman and Chinese empires during the classical era was that the Roman Empire practiced Christianity, whereas China practiced Confucianism. Perfect. So there's the yellow. In Rome, Christianity was illegal until Emperor Constantine made it legal. In China, Confucianism was a philosophy that stressed education. Yeah, I mean, this is totally good evidence. I think what you can do, one thing that you can add in here, you can change, is instead of worrying about it being illegal, just say, in Rome, Christianity was legalized under Emperor Constantine, right? And then, which made the religion more popular. For example, in China, Confucianism was a philosophy that stressed education. Okay, so yeah, so this part would be your C. So there you go for your blue. Here's the problem, though, is this right here. So it's not enough to just say, therefore, they were different. You would have to kind of explain why they were different. Like, this is where you're explaining it. I guess this prompt should have just been a little bit better instead of just what is, explain. So instead of saying, therefore, the 2 empires practice different religions, you might say, Rome, like, I don't know, Rome is geographically closer to the Middle East, where Christianity started, and China is geographically closer to India, where Buddhism started. And these empires practiced different religions because, and that would be better, right? Like here, and it's not like you're just saying they're different because they're different. They're different because of geography or because of, whatever it is, like why. That's your last sentence. So this is how you should make that better. If the question's saying explain and you only did these first 2, it depends on exactly what the prompt says, but you may not get the point. If this might be one of the more important pieces of it. All right. One difference between Rome and China in 600 to 600 is their geographic location. For example, Rome's location allows them to access the sea for trading, while in China they were geographically isolated. Okay, so here's something in here. Whenever you're asked about a difference, you don't necessarily just want to focus on geography, right? You don't want to just say that they're different because they were in different places. That's kind of too simple. So a way that you can improve this is this actually becomes your analysis. It's like it's not your main point of difference. It's like they were different within their like goods or their whatever, and then their location, it helps us explain that. So maybe you say one difference in Rome and China is that Rome used sea routes more than, I don't know, China, or that Rome, let's say, is that their main is that they had different main exports. Is that the main exports in Rome were like, you know, olive oil and like things like that, like Mediterranean stuff, while China primarily traded silk. That would be an example. You know, and then or you could just say that their main exports were different. And then this could be that they had different main exports. And then you could just say in Rome, the main export was olive oil, wine, olive oil and wine, while China primarily traded silk and gunpowder. We'll say that. And then you wouldn't want to say, then maybe you say here, then your explanation is, therefore, like this was different because Rome's location allowed them to access like the sea, or like, I don't know, Rome's location. I'm going to erase this part. Rome's location in the Mediterranean supported those exports, while China's location was better for, I don't know, silk. I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head because it's a little bit difficult, but that you see the difference there, right? So like you want to make sure that whatever you're saying is different is like really clear and is something really specific and not just based on geography. And then this one would be your, examples, and then here's your green, here's your third sentence. All right. One difference between the Roman and Han Empire was that the Roman Empire developed philosophies that led to the spread of the Hellenic culture. The Han Empire developed an examination system that forced okay, so yeah, I know that you didn't finish here, but you want to be really clear in your first sentence what the difference is. But here, all you're doing is saying one thing that was true for Rome. So you want to make sure that you don't, like, whenever you're doing a difference, you have to keep the difference in the same category. So that first sentence, you want to introduce that category. So if you want to talk about the different philosophies, then you could say that they developed different philosophies, right? Or that, one difference was that, Rome was like influenced, one difference was that Rome was influenced by the Hellenic culture, while China developed their own unique culture. Something like that, right? And then that would help you really stay focused. And then, the examination system isn't necessarily a part of that, right? Like comparing an examination system to Hellenic culture doesn't necessarily mean the same category. So you want to stay in the same category and then explain from there. And then here you would add, whatever else you wanted to say. Rather ownership. Oh, on yours? Okay. Yeah, I'll move yours over right now. Okay, so that's the key takeaway from this one is like stay in the same category. So you're really, really think about what it is you want to compare and make sure that you stay in that category. All right. One difference between the Roman and Chinese empires from 600 to 600 was the type of labor. In Rome, slavery was common, whereas in China, peasant labor was practiced, but they had much more freedom. For example, peasants were above merchants in the hierarchy because of the ideals of society, rather than, contribution rather than ownership. Yeah, this is good, right? So you can see the clear difference is going to be labor, types of labor. Then you've got examples. So you're specifically identifying slavery in Rome versus peasant labor in China. And then you don't even need this right here. Peasants were above merchants. Oh, okay, wait. So we might need to edit this last one where it says like, you kind of take out this first piece. Whoops. You kind of take out this first piece here, and then it's like within, within China and Rome, the ideals of society, like economic systems, focused more on contribution rather than ownership. I think that's fine. And then you would have that point. All right. Sweet. Thanks for sending all those, you guys. That was awesome. All right. So we've been talking about SAQs now for a while. I'll post this document in there so that you could do these other ones for practice if you wanted to. But I think we've kind of like driven home the point, that like, just to go back up here, and in your questions, you really just want to make sure that you do all three things, because most of the questions you see are gonna say explain a cause, explain a similarity, explain a difference, rather than just identify. And set up your question with ABC, just like that, and then you'll have your three sentences, and you'll get the points for those. So any questions about short answers before we wrap it up? Any final questions? If you want to write any practice short answers, if you've got a prep book, or you've got practice, even if you just Google practice short answer questions, or I'll upload this as a PDF, so if you want to write any of these and send them to me, that's totally cool. You're welcome to do that. Just shoot me an email, hey Amanda, can you grade these for me? I just did this short answer. Make sure that you include the prompt as well, so I can see that, because I can't really grade it without that, because I have to know exactly what the prompt asked. Yes, Dylan, the quotes thing. Don't use quotes in your DBQ at all. It's just a waste of your time. It's just like, you just don't need it. You can paraphrase it and you're much better off. The only time you would quote is if it's like a, 2-3 word phrase that you just like need that phrase, like that's coming from the document and you're just going to wrap it right into your sentence, then fine. But don't quote, like you're not getting evidence points in the DBQ for quoting. You would still have to explain the quote. Like you still have to paraphrase afterwards. So you're just wasting your time if you copy down a quote. Do you have any tips for getting the context to answer the question faster, since we don't have much time? I had trouble thinking of similarities right away. Yes, I do. All right, so here's what I would have done. If I'm doing this, I would have thought quickly through SPICE. Right, so social, political, interaction with the environment, cultural, and economic. I would have just like kind of used SPICE to kind of help me. You can kind of do that in your head. I mean, you could just write down SPICE and then just kind of come up with a few ideas, or you could just do it in your head. But I would kind of run through, okay, what are social things, their gender, their class, their race, can I automatically think of any differences? Maybe I talk about gender hierarchy, or, like someone did about slavery, about class. Then I would think about some political things like government, laws, conflicts, things like that, rulers. I might use that as just to like quickly think, like, what are some things I know about Rome? What do I know about Han? Are they different? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Interaction with the environment. How are they adapting to their environment? That would be more that geography thing that we talked about. Cultural would be like religion, belief, systems, technology, science, any of those things. And so I can kind of run through really quick. Okay, well, what do I know about technologies in Rome, technologies in China? Is there a difference? And then economic would be your trade, anything having to do with money, labor, jobs, anything like that. So my suggestion for you is to really, really know SPICE. And actually, I have a video on that on YouTube about SPICE. So if you want some background, some practice with that, really know SPICE, memorize it, practice it. One way you can practice spice, I used to do this with my students, is like, you could even use like Twitter or Instagram. Go to a news source, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter the news source, some newspaper, magazine, whatever, CNN, whatever, and just roll through their Twitter feed or their Instagram feed and see if you can identify in your head what each news article would fit into. Is this a social article? Is this a political article? Is this economic? You know, it just kind of helps you be able to identify those things faster. That's one way that you can do it. So that's my suggestion for you, is to really use spice to like really, you know, be able to think of things quickly. If we mention a historical event that isn't in the curriculum, and the reader isn't sure, no, they never assume it's wrong. So the readers always want you to, do well, like legitimately, you know, like teachers, the readers are all teachers, and none of them are like benefiting if you don't do well. Like they're not trying to like, they're not looking at your essay trying to figure out like, where can I get points off? Like maybe your teacher is crazy and is doing that, but the readers won't. The readers are really trying to find points. Like they want you to do well. They want to give you as many points as they can. So if you say something in your essay that wasn't in the curriculum, like you know something specific, if the reader knows for sure that you're correct, then they'll add the point for you. If they read something that they're not sure of, they actually sit at a big table. And so when you read, like if you read something, you're like, ooh, I don't know if that's historically correct. They literally like turn to the person next to them and ask. And sometimes, like I know there was one essay a couple years ago about trade, and it was talking about that thing I was talking about disease not spreading in the trans-Saharan trade as much. Someone read that in an essay, and I heard, this is how I know that fact, because I heard this story. They read that, you know, someone had written that in their essay, and the reader was like, ooh, I'm not sure if that's correct. And so they brought it to the person next to them. The person next to them was like, I don't know, sounds right, but I'm not sure. Then they brought it to their like table leader, and the table leader still wasn't sure. So they brought it to, like, there's a whole hierarchy of people, and like they will use every resource in their power to see if you're correct. And, you know, if they can verify you're correct, then you get the point. They do the same thing, by the way, with handwriting. So if you've got like some crazy handwriting, if they can't read your writing, they really try to, and then someone else might look at it. So they're really trying to give you the points. Like they really want you to get the points. How long should you take doing each SAQ? Okay, so you don't want to spend more than like 12 minutes on each one. So that's 12 minutes on the whole thing. So let's say, so you're doing 3 short answer questions. You want to spend about less than 4 minutes on A, less than 4 minutes on B, less than 4 minutes on C. So now when you really think about it, that's actually kind of a long time, right? 4 minutes. So, you know, if you really think through and brainstorm and kind of outline your whole response before you jump in, then you should be able to do it within the time limit for sure. And stick to the ACE system, stick to the short responses, stay in the box. But it should be about 12 minutes per question. Any other questions, you guys? I'm actually calling a teacher right now to figure out to see if I can get AP European history involved in the community. So, and I'm talking to an AP biology teacher tomorrow, and I'm hopefully going to get AP bio included. So, you know, just to give you guys a quick update on where we're at with those things. It's been a lot. I've been working hard. So I have some, you know, I have an AP Euro lead, I have an AP bio lead, and I potentially have a AP calculus lead. So if you know of any teachers that are awesome that teach those things, you know, shoot me their information or tell them about this, because I am looking for that. Cool. So if you've got any more questions, so again, so I'll upload this video and this document. I'll upload this document right now. The video will take a little bit longer just because I have to download it and then upload it, and I've got another session soon, so that will be up tonight. This document I'll do right now in case you want to jump in and do some while you've got some time. Then you'll be able to you'll be able to do that. So I just downloaded this as a PDF, and then you can send me any sample ones you write. What's the funniest FRQ you've read? I don't even remember. There are some pretty funny things that come up in essays. Sometimes the kid is meant to be funny, and sometimes they didn't, but they'll write some stuff that are Sometimes it's really funny. Like they'll make the same mistake throughout the whole thing. Like they'll just misidentify something. Sometimes we read ones that had like little notes at the end that were just like, please, I tried, please give me points. And I don't know. Those are kind of funny, but don't do that. Like the readers don't care how nice you are in asking for points. Just give them the answers. I'll have to think about it. I'll think about what the funniest ones I saw. But I've seen some pretty funny ones. I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't make you feel bad. Like the teachers are not trying to make fun of you, but sometimes there's some funny stuff that comes up. All right, you guys. So it's been real. I'll post this PDF right now. Can you just type a 5 in the, or I don't know, a 9 because you want all 9 points, a 9 in the chat if this was helpful for you before you log out. So I can get some quick feedback. Sweet. All 9s. I've heard stories of kids writing swear words and crossing them out. Yeah, that's happened before. Whatever. Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming. The PDF will be up. Feel free to write a sample essay and I will check it out. And so I will see you next Friday. We're jumping into period 3. Woohoo! All right, I'll see you guys later. Have a good weekend.